the validation of a father. We as men, we love the validation of a woman, but there's nothing like the validation of a father. I throw myself up under the bus on this one. I remember wanting to know my father on a more personal level. It wasn't until years, I mean, I was about in my 20s that we finally had that confrontation because I held that anger. But you know what? When I look back, it wasn't anger. It was the validation because I remember being a top athlete in high school. I remember National Signing Day. I remember that to the back of my dying day because it wasn't called National Signing Day when I grew up. You know, you just went into the cafeteria and you signed a scholarship. You know what I mean? But it was big. To me, that was still big because we still had
Yeah.
our family and friends. And I remember, I'm trying not to get emotional. The only person was there was my daughter. I mean, not my daughter, but my sister. And I remember signing that scholarship. And that night I walked out on the track and I said, what the fuck am I doing this shit for? That's exactly what I said. I looked up at the sky and I said, what the fuck am I doing this shit for? Who is cheering for me? You
Yeah.
know, I don't have a mom. My mom was deceased. I'm like, who's cheering for me? My grandmother, she's raising her grandkids. I'm like, what the fuck? And then it switched to my dad. I said, this motherfucker can't even come and see his son. And I held that anger. But the way that I redid it was I said, I'm going to keep being better. I'm going to keep being better. When I went to the Olympic trials and became an Olympic candidate, nobody was there. I was like, damn, I'm doing all these things to get him to recognize.
Yeah.
Play football, still nothing. Professional bodybuilder, still nothing. Then one day I go over to his house and my female friend was there. And I wasn't angry at him because because I had already healed that bridge. But I'm gonna break this down where it makes sense and you can share your point too. She says, I didn't know you was an Olympic candidate. I never told nobody. I said, how the fuck do you know? He said, there's a box right here with artifacts. So I looked at it. My dad was in the other room. So I'm looking and I'm thinking, holy crap. I see all these news articles, these clippings, and I put them back in there. I didn't say nothing to my dad that day. I waited a while later and I said, hey, man, I'm going to ask you this question. What was my mom to you? I said, was she just a fuck? Was I just a fuck? My dad broke down. He said, no. He said, I loved your mom, but I wasn't a man. I fell in love with the streets.
Yeah.
He said, but out of all my kids, I'm proud of you. I said, Dad, I kind of know that because when you was in the other room, I looked in that box. He said, I've been following your career ever since you was a baby. You just never knew that. Now, let's go back to you. You lost your father right in front of you. I couldn't even begin to imagine that feel. What do you remember about your dad and the fact that you needed that validation? Did you need the validation? Did you need more of the validation when he died and you say, how do I move on now? Pop, where you at?
I mean, my dad and I were close. That was the problem. So my dad and I, we went fishing. During the summer, we fished almost every week together. I mean, I was tight with my dad. He was big into baseball cards. I had my dad gave me the first box of 86 Flair. I had 6 Michael Jordan rookie cards. I mean, he was my hero. So him and I were really close. And the downfall is that I was 16, so I was at that age, right, where girls were the new thing, and I had got my driver's license, and we were starting to kind of separate, and I was trying to become a man, but I was still an adolescent boy, and I wasn't growing up yet, and he was still trying to rein me in to get me to wake up and realize, don't be distracted, focus on your grades and focus on this. So I don't think that I had a life where I wasn't unvalidated, because I mean, I always caught the biggest fish, and he always made a big deal about it. And I was stellar in school. I was always getting straight A's. He always it was just normal for him to say straight A's again. I knew it. So it wasn't a big deal there as far as the validation goes. But the toughest part for me was that at that age 16, right? And because it's the beginning at that point in time, because I'm a Gen Xer, that was like the beginning of the of sexual premise and girls and all this. So I really needed him to be there. And my brother was gone. My brother was in college. And he would have been the guy I could have asked, but he was gone, right? So Matt's gone. Then my dad leaves. And I was just like, what do I do? And that's why I told you, like, I don't feel like I became a man till, I was 48 years old.